We're going down to business. I've been waiting 1 year for this interview, talking about musicals, talking about everything, but I wanted to talk about first your school, the academy. I know you did a seminary here in Puerto Rico, and you're now with this new generation of young superstars that now rising up for the new bar in the wrestling world. Talk to me about a little about the academy.
The academy was born out of a very specific desire to, I've had a good run. I've had 25 years in the business. I have done and seen, I've traveled the world. I've met some really interesting, cool people. I've done some amazing things. And I want as many people as possible to be able to share that excitement, to have those experiences too. And so that's really why I started the academy. I feel like I have a certain level of knowledge about the business. I understand the inner workings of the business and psychology and storytelling, which is super important. And uh, and there were things that I didn't necessarily appreciate or like about the business, and rather than just complain about them, I figured I would be the change that I wanted to see. And I feel like I'm training my students in a particular way that I see, is the best way.
And some students, you like recall your old style of announcing yourself. Some students come with that to talk to you about that the dynamic that you have in the past.
So I think, a large part of our students, a large portion of our students that come in are wrestling fans. And most of them are wrestling fans. They've been wrestling fans their whole lives. This is what they've always wanted to do. So there is that initial deer in the headlights kind of when you meet somebody that's been on TV, where they look at me a certain way. But after a few weeks or months of training with me, I think that shell is chipped away and we're able to just work, and just be professionals. And I hope that I think my students respect me. I want them to respect me, but I want them to respect me because they want to respect me instead of feeling, well, I have to show him a certain level of, you know. So I feel like I do a good job of that at the academy. Um, Probably not everybody every time, but I respect my students.
I want to go back a little because I know Mr. Kennedy since I watch WWE, big fan of Mr. Kennedy. But I want to go back in the way that you like raise up the bar. You went. I remember I watched Velocity and you did some sort of matches in Velocity, but you were doing like you were this cocky. You were like, I'm gonna introduce myself. I would say, man, this guy is very rough. Like he has some nerve. And then we see you in SmackDown made an impact. How was that rally coming up from Velocity, coming from you saying this new, you introduce yourself. You're doing great matches. You were undefeated. So talk to me about that run on SmackDown.
um, so I worked on the independent scene for about five to almost 6 years before I got signed with WWE. And once I got there, I had to prove myself. I got signed and I went to OVW, which was OVW at the time was basically like NXT is today to WWE. It was a farm system, a feeder system. So I had to really like prove myself there. And then Paul Heyman changed my life. Paul Heyman started writing television for OVW, and he just did just the right things with me on TV and gave me the right opportunities. And one night he told me, go out there and announce yourself tonight and make it, big and grand. And so I did. And, I said my last name twice. And 5 weeks later, I got a call from Tommy Dreamer saying, hey, and everybody that's at OVW, your dream is like, I want to get up to the active roster. I want to go to SmackDown or Raw. And so I got a call from Dreamer and he said, they want to look at you at SmackDown. and they want you to do your announcer thing. They want you to do your whole gimmick. And so I went and I did it, and it worked out. They liked what they saw, and they gave me an opportunity. And it was very quickly from the time that I debuted on Velocity. I think 3 weeks went by, and I was debuting on SmackDown, and then it was sort of I had the proverbial rocket ship strapped to me for the next year. And honestly, at the time, I felt like I belonged there. It wasn't like I literally was like, yeah, I deserve to be here because I worked really hard to get there. And by the time that I did get on TV, I had the confidence that I needed. And so when you saw that confidence, that character over the top, that was just an extension of my own personality. I really felt that way to a degree. I mean, I'm not condescending to people, but
So I know you have one first finisher that you change it to the mic check.
uh,
Why is the reason that you change it?
it's kind of a funny story. They always say that if you got a finisher, you want something that everybody can take. And, Stone Cold Steve Austin, the stunner, right? Anybody can get a stunner. You can stun anybody at any time, no matter how big or small they are. And the thing about the Finley roll up, the second rope, the Green Bay plunge, um,
The replay plunge. Yeah.
you know, I remember I was working on I hit it for about 10 weeks in a row, and I came back to the curtain, and JBL said, "Man, that's a hell of a finisher you got there. I'll never take it. You gonna take that?" And he looked at Undertaker and he's like, "Undertaker, you gonna take that move?" Don't plan on it. And it was like really one of those moments that, like, how am I gonna get the Undertaker up on the top rope to be able to do this move? Why would JBL ever be up on the top rope? So it was like one of the things where I had to evolve a little bit, figure out, okay, what's something that I can do to everybody? And I still, obviously, can pull it out from time to time. It depends on who I'm working with. But that's the thing about wrestling moves and having a different sorts of moves that you can do. Some moves I can do to these people, and some moves I can only do to these people.
And I want to talk to you about. I know you said this in a lot of interviews. I watched Chris Van Vliet, and man, do you think you're the biggest like what if in WWE history? Like, what would have happened if Mr. Kennedy didn't get like injured and
Uh,
cash in the money in the bank?
yeah.
WWE champion, world heavyweight champion. Do you think you better stay on SmackDown even if they drafted you on Raw?
Um, like at the time, I would have, I think, rather have just stayed on SmackDown. I really felt like this was so at the time, Raw and SmackDown were completely separate shows.
Yeah.
We were under the same umbrella, but we literally treated it like two different companies, two different teams, really. And I felt like our team was the better team on SmackDown.
Yeah.
Really, just the way that I felt our matches, the camaraderie, and everything. Um, and so, yeah, I would have loved to stay on SmackDown, but at the same time, Raw is the flagship show of the company. Maybe further down the line, maybe I wish I would have stayed on SmackDown a little longer and then gone over and maybe earned my stripes a little bit more, so to speak. But again, it's one of those things that like I really I can't do anything about it. I can't go back and I can't change it, right? Like so all I can all I can do is learn from my mistakes. And again, like I said in the CBB podcast, I can hope to pass that information on to my students so that they don't necessarily have to make the same mistakes that I made.
So we go a little fast forward. And like I said, I'm a big Ken Kennedy fan. I like love when you went to TNA. And I want to talk to you about a certain promo you did. You're the champ, you walk out, and I remember when you say, Back there, they wouldn't let me even chew gum down to the ring. Talk to me about a little. What is the work in that promo when you were back the champion TNA?
So that was a situation where I was, the thing that was different between the two companies was WWE, they hand you a 2.5-page script. You're going to read whatever's on that script, or you're going to go out there and perform that. Whereas in TNA, they would just give me kind of bullet points, and I could go out there and kind of wing it and put it into my own words. Here's where we need to get to, definitely, but like you put it in your words, right? And that was one of the times where it was pretty clear cut, laid out to me by Vince Russo. And it was very negative towards my time at WWE. And I didn't even run it by him. I just went out to the ring and I changed it and I softened it a lot. So the initial promo that I cut in front of the live crowd wasn't what you ended up seeing. And I came back to the curtain and Vince was like, hey, that's not what I'm looking for. I really, really need you to go out there and cut. And at the end of the day, like, I'm an employee of a company and I have a job to do. And my boss at that particular time was Vince Russo, and he was, he's the director. And he says, this is what I need out of you. And at that moment, I had a choice to not do it or to go home, basically. And I chose to, I went out there and I did it. We actually went out and cut the promo. I had to go out and tell the crowd, hey, sometimes, most of the time, we do everything in one take. But on this particular night, we're filming television, and play along with me, basically. I'm going to cut somewhat the same promo. And so I did it, and I don't like it. Looking back on it, I wish I wouldn't have said it. But, again, it's one of those things that, like, I had a decision to make in a really short period of time, and my boss asked me, I want you to do this. So I had to do that.
So then in TNA, you had a lot of wrestling matches that I remember, and I want to recall about some stable that the people like forgot about it, and I did love that story. Didn't love the finish, but I did love that story when they started the Aces and Eights. When you have a match with Bully Ray, I think it was a street fight. Do you have with him?
Yeah. Well,
You had a
the
street fight
final
and a coffin match
the final match was a coffin match in,
for a
I
coffin
think it
match.
was Manchester, England. We did it, and it's one of my favorite feuds that I've ever been involved with Bully Ray. Like, I felt like we had really good chemistry, and the finish to that match was, you couldn't have asked for a better finish. I had to mic check him into that coffin. They gave us a coffin that was like
Yeah.
just just like exactly the same width of Bubba. And he told me, he goes, can you just mic check me into that? And I said, I can try. I can just, I'll have to hit it and roll up the side. And he goes, I think I can do it. And we did it. In that moment, he fit perfectly into that coffin. So
Yeah, I remember. I remember. That's fine.
Yep.
Yo, I
Actually, the
think
funny thing was,
TNA.
is like earlier in the day, we got to the building, and now I've got to put Bubba Ray Dudley's big ass into this coffin. They gave us a coffin that was about half the size of the one that you ended up seeing on TV. They were scrambling all day to try to get a coffin that we could actually fit. Bubba's a big dude, he's you know he's a big guy, so
Yeah, yeah.
we had to do
Man,
some scrambling. It was pretty funny.
no, man. I remember all those matches because I saw it. That was the time the TNA was on the Spike TV, and let's rewind about a little. When you work with Sting, and Sting did the Joker for the first time with that storyline with the Hulk Hogan, with the Eric Bischoff. Talk to me about a little about that time, um, like working with the legend that is Sting.
He couldn't have been a kinder person to work with. I remember the first day that they told me that we were going to be paired up, that we were going to go into a program together. And we passed each other in the hall. And he said, "Hey, man, I just want you to know that, like, I am open to anything. So if you have any good ideas or anything like that, just don't worry about offending me or thinking, oh, that's too much or whatever. Like, you've got an idea, I want to hear it." And so, like, I actually, when I was coming up in the business, especially when I came up at TNA, I remember doing extra work for TNA at the National Fairgrounds when they first started out, and Road Dogg was there, and Road Dogg said, "You remind me of a young Sting." And I heard that
You're
throughout my
like,
career because I had the bleach blonde hair, um, and so I just said, like, what if we could work something where I imitate you and I dress up as like Surfer Sting? And he was like, that sounds like a great idea. And he goes, "Actually, I have all my old gear, so I could actually, you could wear the gear." And then the icing on the cake for me, as I said before, people are wrestling fans. People that come to the academy are wrestling fans. I'm a wrestling fan myself. So to be working with Sting in the first place, and then to sit there every day and have Sting actually apply my makeup, because who could have done Sting makeup better than the man himself? So that was a really cool, surreal sort of moment in the wrestling business for me.
that's so awesome. Like learning these stories um of of yourself. And
Yep.
before we go, I want to talk to you about what was the moment that TNA said, "Okay, Ken, Mr. Anderson, we're gonna make you the man. We're gonna make you the champion of this company." How was that talk of you being the man in TNA that time?
I don't think there was like a specific moment that I can recall. It was just they kept giving me opportunities on TV to speak and to show my character. And then they were also giving me opportunities to perform in matches that I felt like I could showcase what I could do. And everything just sort of converged at once. And it just started going that way. And they were like, the crowds were reacting more and more. So it was sort of one of those, like, it just naturally progressed that way. And sometimes wrestling companies will, sometimes a crowd takes a liking to a wrestler, but whoever's in charge is sort of like, well, that's not what we had planned. So we're going to ignore that to a degree. And I just feel like they didn't ignore it. They went with it.
Man, I wish I could still talk to you because there's so many questions I want to have. I don't want to get more of your time. I want to say thank you. Thank you for giving me this interview. Thank you to talking this the music the Gem Hayes did about you, a little about your history. I really appreciate your time here with us, Ken. And any last message you want to say to Latin American here, a Lucha Libre Online in Puerto Rico?
I just, I love it there. I really, really miss Puerto Rico. My wife and I just traveled there about a year ago. Almost like 1 year and 1 week ago, we were in the country or on the island, and well, I just can't wait to come back. I'm in talks with EWA right now as we speak to come back. So, and for those of you that are interested in getting involved in the wrestling industry, I know Puerto Rico is pretty far away from Minneapolis, Minnesota, but I'm willing and able to like help people out and give advice where I can. So if you want, you can look up on my social media channels. I give my number for the wrestling school out. Feel free to contact me.
Well, Ken, thank you again for your time here with us at Lucha Libre Online. I hope you can go again here in Puerto Rico and man, wishing you the best in your future.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Y en español nadie lo hace mejor.